No, don't leave it up the rest of the time. Okay, our first speaker, this is a real dear friend of mine, Steve Frank. We have known each other for a long time. Let's see, I think that Steve, we met when they were forming Dirt, I believe. It's been a long time ago. But Steve he's a political activist. He's a writer for the News and Views. He is a stabilizing force within the California GOP, which sometimes they don't want to be stabilized, but in spite of that, Steve is kind of like the lion tamer that's out there with his whip in his chair and kind of keeps everything in alignment. So Steve is our first speaker. Steve, I'd like to turn the podium over to you, and after you finish speaking, if you would take a seat at the table, we'll have a panel afterwards. And I'm going to get the cattle prod now.
Okay, the cattle prod's on its way. What a great day in America. Donald Trump is still president. My first campaign was walking precincts for Nixon for president in 1960. So, as if my good friend Tom Del Beccaro was introducing me, he would say that I've been around since before the Beatles. The life form, not the singing. I am way too old to be subtle, and I've watched over the years the movement of conservatives from one movement to another, from one theory to another. When I got started in 1960, we were called National Review Conservatives. Then we moved on to the silent majority conservatives. We then moved on to the moral majority conservatives. Then somewhere along the line, we became what we now call conservatarians, conservatives and libertarians. And so we are at that point in our conservative history. But I'd like to go back to the beginning of the 20th century for the conservative, modern day conservative movement. If you read some of my writings in California Political News and Views, I like to bring up the history of the conservative movement so we can understand where we are today, why we are where we are today, and how we can move our ideology forward. Now, some people will say, you know, the most important issue is immigration. Others will talk about the debt, or tax reform, or ISIS. We would be talking about all these different things. But there is a foundation for all of us to understand as to the basis of our conservative views. There are folks in this room who are libertarian, mainly, who are traditional conservatives, mainly, who are people of faith conservatives, that they get their conservative values from the Bible, that there are a variety of strains of conservatism, but we're all in the same room. What then puts us together in this room with a common ideology, regardless of the direction we got here? Several years ago, I had the honor of working for a congressman from this area by the name of George Radonovich. And George and I were traveling up and down the state. I was introducing him to political leaders around the state, and he had an opportunity to speak at the College Republican State Convention, which was held at Berkeley, at UC Berkeley. And he asked my advice as to what should I say to them? How should I speak to them? And we were speaking, the rally itself for the convention was held at Sproul Hall. And literally, there is, you know about the Walk of Fame in Hollywood? Sproul Hall has a Walk of Fame with stars all freedom. And there's a series of 12 books, and then there's some movies behind it. And we got the books. And my 8-year-old, we gave her the first one, because she can read now and read well. It was on the Constitution and what it means. And it was the lessons that I wish we had learned in the early grades. And what we can do as parents and grandparents is begin to practice. Not enough, no offense, it is not enough to make sure they go to church on Sunday. It is not enough to send them to Sunday school, to have a faithful home. That's not enough. It's good. It's not enough. And as conservatives, we model our lives. How do we live it? And that gives us the opportunity to bring up the next generation of people who are responsible for themselves, who believe in freedom, who believe in the free market, and individuals who will be faithful. God before country. And the only way you do that is by showing that. It's not enough to say it. You have to show it. Kids learn what they see, not just what they hear. So, in conclusion, what can we do as individuals for ourselves, our community? Okay? Oh, I thought I'd have less time. Didn't know I got so much in. What can we do as individuals to push it? How many of you are members of the Rotary Club? How many are members of a NRA? Do you know that the NRA has an alarming number of individuals that aren't registered to vote?
Really?
Are you aware that they have an alarming, now we're going to hear from Craig Ewan later about the evangelical community in this. I'm not going to talk about that, Craig. I'm going to talk about the NRA pro-life groups, people who have given up. Talking about the strain of conservatism. There is a strain of Christianity that goes back to the days of the itinerant pastor right after the Civil War. And they were preaching, and there are churches today that still preach the idea, we are of God, not of this earth. Therefore, you don't have to be involved in political activities, nor should you, because you get sullied by it. Trust me, politics is dirty. I've been there. I have plenty of scars. I give it, my friend Celeste Gregg likes to tell people that Steve Frank knows where the bodies are buried. Because he put them there. And that may be true, but that's the old me. I'm more of a friendly person these days. But we can be doing these things and promoting our philosophy, especially among those who say, whether from a church, a biblical viewpoint, or another viewpoint, that when they speak, they're talking about policy. And what we can be doing is forgetting the idea that government doesn't. So I was mentioning about Nathan. And in that speech on individual freedom, my first speech, I said, look at your shoes. Your shoes are controlled by government. Look at your watch. It's controlled by government. The fact we're here in school is controlled by government. What we are learning, controlled by government. The roads we came on, controlled by government. There isn't an aspect of our lives that government doesn't have a say over. So, the question was raised by the teacher, well, what would you like to be when you grow up? I said, well, I'd like to be a second baseman for the Yankees. I lived at the time, or I just moved from New York, and I lived a few blocks from Yankee Stadium when I lived in the Bronx in New York. And I wanted to be a second baseman for the Yankees. Trust me, I really wanted to. I also wanted to be a lawyer. I also wanted to be a successful businessman. So I told the teacher, you know what I want to be? I want to control sports, doctors, shoe repairs, schools. I want to be a politician. And that is truly where it is. We have the ability to control every aspect of our lives. Not that we want it, but that government demands it. So what we really want to do, individual responsibility, we want to roll back these things. Do you know to braid hair in the state of California, you need a government license?
Wow, to braid hair.
To braid hair.
Come on.
Now, my wife braids my 8-year-old and 5-year-old granddaughter's hair. I can't imagine her getting a license from the state to do that. Finally, it is up to us. It is our responsibility. I developed the POW MIA bracelet, worked 7 years on behalf of the POWs, and I ended those speeches the way I'm going to end this one. No man escapes when freedom fails. The best men rot in filthy jails. And those who cry, appease, appease, are hanged by those they try to please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Great speech, right?